Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Kerbal Space Program in the series we're calling Escaping Kerbin. So as you may be able to tell from the title, I've got a little bit of something to confess. I have been playing this game for quite some time, and I have made many a satellite in my day. But for some reason, I seem to forget all of that today, and we make mistake after mistake. But I learned from it, and I decided to just go forth with this episode, and even though it took me a lot longer to record this, and as you can see, it's actually a longer episode than normal as well, and that's just because we were trying so hard to just get some kind of success out of this, out of these failures, but as this is a career mode let's play, I feel that it's only fair to show not just my successes, but my failures as well. So today we are going to attempt to put up a satellite communication network around Minmus, as well as try to send a ScanSat satellite there as well. And we have a bunch of science to spend, as you can see from the last episode. We did really well with this, so I'm just going to be going here and going through the science nodes to see what is important to focus on and what we should spend our money or our science points on. So yeah, scanning tech is going to be big. I want to start scanning planets. This node right there has our very first scannable item. So we're probably going to end up going with that. And just, I'm here looking around. Cameras are nice. Better communication dishes are going to be nice. So I go ahead and take that one for the communication dish. And then I go ahead and take this one for the scanning tech. Oh, I don't grab it just yet. But I do end up grabbing that one. There's just so many options right now, and so many things that are available to us, and it's just a matter of choosing the right ones at the right time to correctly progress in the way that you want to. If I were to go fully into the scanning tech and the communications and the solar panels, then we'd be setting ourselves up for a very probe-heavy gameplay. But as it is here, I'm trying to focus on both probes and crewed missions, so I have to spread out my points a little bit more. So here we are going to make our very first ScanSat. And for those who may not be aware, the scanning capabilities, that top little piece I just added, is from the ScanSat mod. If you're not familiar with that, just basically it gives you the ability to get different information about a planet's surface using satellites like this one that I'm building. So yeah, I've got a scanner on there. I've got 4 heavy-duty communication dishes that should be able to reach anywhere in our little area. So that's the Mun, Minmus, and Kerbin. Should be able to communicate with all of them. Those are some fancy communication dishes, and we spent a lot of money on that, so it should work. We should be very happy with it. So yeah, so I'm testing out the action groups to make sure that everything deploys as it should, because we have robotic parts in here, so we want to make sure that we got everything connected. I wasn't sure how much those communication dishes would block of the solar panels, which is why I decided to put them on extending pistons, just to give them a little bit more clearance from the dishes. So that looks good. Just a simple test of the action groups. I'd like to get the scanner on an action group, but it seems that I only have the ability to toggle it, which isn't great. But here I put some lights on there, and this is where I'm starting to meet my demise in these things. I just to spoil what the problem was, so then you can see it going forward from here, is I didn't put enough batteries on there. I put some big, pretty heavy batteries. I just stuck about like 4 or 5 of them on there. Oh yeah, and our control room is still the different control room. It's good. It's just not the one that I like. So there's that. But we just come in here for a quick second to see what things are looking like. But yeah, anyways, so I don't have enough batteries on this thing. I've got solar panels, that's great. I've got quite a few batteries. Oh, that was a test of the self-destruct sequence, which worked perfectly. But the thing is I have more things draining my energy than the things being able to produce my energy. So no matter what, eventually this satellite is going to be dead. It's not going to have any control, and its communication dishes aren't going to be functional, nor will the scanner part of it. So it's unfortunate that it took me the entirety of the episode to learn that. Like I said, this is we're gonna try to embrace our failures. I very well, like, I thought about this, and I very well could have just not had this episode at all, just not shown you the process that I went through and the things that I was thinking, and yeah, it would make me look better, because it'd be like, oh yeah, that guy knows how to Kerbal. But the thing is that even after hundreds of hours, you still make mistakes, and my mistake was just assuming that you just chuck enough batteries on there and everything will be fine. But it's not. So again, another test of the explosives. These look nice. This is gonna help us keep our space trash to a minimum, which is ironic because this entire episode we do nothing but make some space trash. So that's fun. But yeah, so now it's time to actually launch it. This is a real mission, no longer a simulation. And we're just going to try to get this thing over to Midness. Again, since there's a lot going on this episode, because I did so many attempts to make something work, I just wanted something to be good by the end of the episode, to say like, oh, even though we wasted all that time and resources and money on these satellites that didn't work, at least we'll have something to show from it. So that's kind of why this episode is as long as it is. But there were things that I felt like I couldn't leave out, and I felt like I would have cheated not just myself but you guys as well if I had just not filmed this or not produced this episode. Like, if I just skipped on to the next one and been like, hey, we did some good stuff here, we did a lunar mission, and check that out, and don't pay attention to all these dead satellites, all these orbits of just not functional orbits on these satellites, and just strange, and, it didn't feel right. So here you are. Here's a episode full of failures. So, if you don't like that, if you'd rather me just forego the realism of living with our failures and just produce good old-fashioned Kerbal content, then let me know. Because, it's easier. It's easier to look like you're always doing the right thing. Always. I could have fit other stuff into this episode and just called it a day. But I feel like that's a little cheating. So back to the mission. We came in on an incline, and so we were 4 degrees off the relative inclination on the on our orbit, our approach. So I just burned normal. The way that we would do. Oh wait, that's right. This is Midness. I thought we were going to the moon. That's the next episode, we go to the moon, but we change our inclination to match up perfectly with the moon. But this is not just, it's just midness. It's just the regular inclination change you had to make, the 6 degrees to come in at the right angle. So and here we are. Because this is a ScanSat, we were aiming for a polar orbit, as you saw. Now we're just burning and extending our apoapsis out, and we should meet it in no time. And my trajectory went too quick, so I just passed right over the planet, so I'm just going and doing some corrections. I try to just do a little bit of a manual burn, but then that just ends up going the wrong direction. Yep, so I decide to plot in the correction burn to get me directly over the planet, and I'm feeling smart about that. I'm like, yeah, that'll do great, but what I should have done was plotted in my capture burn, because as you can see in the top left, I have no signal now, and I will continue to not have signal for the rest of my journey. So had I plotted in that capture burn, this craft would have just been circling over Minmus. It wouldn't have worked. It didn't have any charge, because once again, the amount of electricity being used was higher than the amount of electricity being generated. So even though I have 4 big solar panels, they just can't keep up. So I have no control, and I go ahead and miss my capture burn entirely, and I go on and escape the sphere of influence of the Mun. So I'm a little perturbed, obviously I expected it a little bit, because I'm working with a probe out to Minmus, and we don't have a lot of connection there, so running out of connection is something that happens, and you need to be prepared for. So I wasn't entirely irritated, because I hadn't quite figured out my flaw yet. And I don't know what I was doing here. I was thinking like, oh, maybe I'll make a burn and come right back out to the orbit and get recaptured. And so I'm fooling around playing with that orbit, and then I lost connection again. We get slightly close to the Mun and manage to get into line with those satellites to connect. And then I'm going in and I'm trying to plot my maneuver. There we are. So I go ahead and just pop that back into flight computer. And I don't know why I assume that this is a good orbit, but I'm just trying to work with what I have. And so I make it so that way at least I'm not crashing back into the atmosphere, which honestly I should have done. I should have just let this thing retire. There's no need for it to just be floating around in space. It's just one more piece of trash that we're going to have to go and collect at some point. Or at the very least put some explosives on. Or it actually has explosives. It just needs to activate the explosives. That's the hard part. Is I could have just blown this up right here and now while I had the signal to do so. But instead, we just follow our elliptical orbit all the way out to its apoapsis. And we let the flight computer do its maneuver, which will ultimately seal this craft's fate. And it will no longer have the possibility of coming back home or decommissioning or even doing the thing that it was meant to do. I'm going to take a quick second here to let you know, especially to those who've watched this far, who didn't just exit out when they heard that there's going to be failures. I will actually be uploading a second video today. Shortly after this one is finished processing, I'm going to go ahead and upload the next episode of Escaping Kerbin, because in the next episode we actually have a few successes. You know, we do some things that are worthwhile and further our cause as a space agency. We do things that make up for all the failures that we had in this episode. And so if you find yourself a little frustrated watching this, knowing that like I don't succeed in certain things, then just stay tuned. We got something good for you coming up soon. So now I haven't quite figured out that the batteries were the issue, the fact that I didn't have enough batteries on there. So I decide to make myself a little satellite placer. So this is going to be a crewed vessel, so we'll have control throughout the entirety of it, no matter if we have signal or not. And then what it's going to do is it's going to put the satellites in place and then bring our Kerbal on home. So that's the goal. That's the plan. I'm not even bringing any science on here. It's not meant for science. It's just meant to do a job, and that's place satellites. So I name it the Sat Placer V1. And I just, start focusing on the general things that the ship needs: communication, solar panels, batteries, life support. To keep things nice and tight within its radius, I put those communications on hinges, robotic hinges that will be activated upon the deployment stage. I go ahead and set my parachutes, so that way they will be able to bring us back down safely. And now I just take a second and I just start working on the satellites. And now I'm seeing here, each one of those batteries has 1,000 charge, and so I'm thinking 4,000, that should be good. And yeah, I can't put those communication dishes in there correctly, so once again, putting them on hinges, but also putting them on pistons to extend them out, just give them a little bit of a wider berth, as well as give the satellite or the solar panels room to capture sunlight. And now it's time to just throw on a little bit of propulsion to it, some baguette tanks and some spider engines, just to give it a little push. We don't actually need it to carry that much Delta V. It's not actually going to be going anywhere. But the two reasons why we want to have at least some kind of control with it is, one is if we need to make micro adjustments on its position to better... Oh, yeah, see, I didn't put a active communication on there, so even during my test I didn't have any control. But the second reason why we want to have propulsion on there is if we ever decide to decommission these satellites in favor of a more powerful one, then we'll have enough Delta V to drop us back into the atmosphere. Alright, there we go. Successful deployment of the things. The solar panels look like they have enough room, so that's good. And then I go and put lights on there, which is just one more battery drain. And I don't need lights. I like lights on my satellites to give you something to see, especially in the dark sides of planet and stuff. But at least in this particular instance where we needed all the electrical charge we had, that was a poor decision on my part. So now we're going to make the deployer. I went ahead and turned that satellite into its own sub-assembly so I could just drag it and drop it onto the ship where it needs to go. My fairings aren't very big, so I have to readjust the fuel tank. There we go, and I just barely use the max amount that I can, and I of course have a lot of troubles building the fairing. as I normally do. Fairings, for some reason, just love to not work the way that they are intended to work. So again, I suck that in a little bit more, and then wouldn't you know it, that's what I needed. Now I'm adjusting my stagings because I don't want these satellites to all pop off at the same time. I need them to go individually, because we're not using the satellites to place our satellites. We're not using themselves to place themselves. We are using this main ship to place them in the correct place. And so basically, all we need to do is pop them off. Yep, see, so I activated the deploy action group, and that just made a mess of everything. So we go and we fix that. And what we do is we create a new action group to deploy just the communications and solar panels on the main body of the ship. So there we go. So that way we can have a little bit of sunlight hit us while we're going, but we don't have to have every single panel open on these things. And I just want to make a note that I chose lower tech panels for our satellites. See, that's why you also have to make sure your staging is correct. But I chose lower tech satellites or solar panels for the satellites, as opposed to these ones that I have on the main ship, is because those satellites won't be coming back into the atmosphere, so we don't need them to retract. And so I figured we'll just save a little money that way. Okay, now I'm just readjusting the action group. And we're going in for another test flight, just to make sure everything works right. And so, yep, now I added those small little antennas to the action group to make sure that they have some sort of way of communicating right off the bat. Alright, so now we're going to test our first ejection of the satellite. And, oh man, that is looking good. Look at that. That is a good looking satellite. It's moving pretty far away from the ship. The force percentage on the decoupler is a little bit higher than probably I wanted, because that satellite is already probably now out of position of where it should have been. But, I don't pay attention to that just yet. I'm just playing around with things. And once again, like, everything is going smoothly. I have a good test here. I'm putting myself outside of mid-mist to see, and as you can see, I don't have signal, and our batteries have drained. We no longer have electrical power, and that's the real problem here. Is I'm thinking the problem is signal, and it's like, oh, I'm so far away from Kerbin, and so I don't have the signal to do it, so I'm gonna have to deploy things early. And also, one of the problems that I ended up having at one point, I realized that my communication dishes, it just exploded a solar panel. My dishes, not all of them were designated to point to, Kerbin and Minimus in the Mun. Some of them weren't programmed at all, and so that was another fault on my part, which I should have been. I should have been better. I've played this for long enough that is a mistake that I shouldn't have made. So we're just gonna do some final touches on this. Now we're getting ready to put in our transfer stage. This will take us to Minmus. We got a Poodle engine, which is one of the ones that we just recently unlocked. So it's the bigger equivalent to the Terrier engine, I think. So it's a logical fit. So we get my struts, get my fuel ducts, not duck, And then I opt for a bit beefier of a side booster because my thrust to weight ratio was pretty abysmal with the other ones. So now I'm going to do one last test. So I go ahead and shoot myself to be in the orbit of mid-miss. And I want to test the decoupling. There we go. And the problem with these tests is, once again, I'm kind of cheating myself to the location, which means that I have 100% battery charged. There we go. And so everything has power because it's only been in space for a matter of moments. So these tests that I'm doing, I'm like, oh man, look at that. Look how much control I have over that satellite. Useless, because in reality, I'm going to use up all my battery before I even really get there. So, and then once again, the test around mid-miss shows that communications really isn't enough. So yeah, once again, another failure, but I feel like I've tested enough. I feel like, oh, hi there. Didn't see you there. But I feel like I've tested enough. Like, at this point, I'm frustrated. I've spent hours, very many hours on this. A lot of time goes into each recording that ends up getting cut down. But I was at this for several playthroughs, several different days, all with different amount of hours. So here I'm using it's either called Notes or Notepad, I can't remember. All the mods are listed in the link below in the description. But this is basically just a little text document creator that you can open in-game to just write whatever you need to write. And so here what I'm doing is I'm laying out a checklist for before I launch each satellite. Here are the things that I need to do, as well as jotting down which satellite comes out in which order. So, you know, the north satellite followed by the south satellite and so on. And so this is just going to give me some information to look at while I'm out and about, and I really enjoy it. I highly recommend the Notes. I'm just going to call it Notes mod, because I think that's what it is. But I highly recommend it. It's just useful. You never know what you can really use it for, but then once you kind of get an idea of like, oh, I could write this down, it starts becoming more enjoyable. I used it a little bit in our RP1 series, which, by the way, is still happening. It's just very slow because it takes me a lot of time to research everything and record it, and just lately I just haven't had the drive for it. I have 2/3 of an episode of the next episode already recorded. I just need to record a little bit more. I just need to do a little bit more in the game before I can really call it an episode. But anyways, as I was saying, I was keeping track of my rocket launches, my sounding rockets, like the distance that they traveled, the max height that they traveled, things like that. I was taking notes on the progression of how everything went, and I think that that's a great usage of it. You know, if you're trying to do complicated missions, if you have a lot of action groups, or if you just want, you know, more information on your crafts, I definitely recommend that mod. So here we are, just making our gravity turn pretty abruptly. You know, that one of the great things with the Pila engines is it just has so much force, so much oomph, that you can really just kind of shove your way to a gravity turn without really any fear. The Pila engine is not vanilla. The Pila engine is from Ven's Parts, just a parts mod. I don't have too many parts mods. I don't like to overload my game with them, and they can also get confusing and redundant at times, and especially since I'm using things like remote tech, like I don't want too many parts that aren't meant to work together, because like, oh yeah, it has a cool satellite dish, but what good is a cool satellite dish if it can't connect to remote tech, you know? So I try to keep my parts mod limited, but I fell in love with Ven's stock revamp in the parts mod a long time back, and this Pila engine is just my favorite, so can't live without it. So once again, I'm just changing my inclination at the ascending node, and I'm using precise maneuver to adjust it, because precise maneuver is a great tool. Another great mod that I will recommend, for any playthrough really. I think it's just a quality of life mod that just it has an amazing quality of life. Oh, look at this. Look at how this boat turns. It is just so funky, the way that it just swings its back end all about. So yeah, I'm looking down there at my relative inclination. I'm gonna just drop that to 0. We're not gonna go for the polar orbit on this one. We are going just for the equatorial, but I want to have it perfectly equatorial. I want it to be 0 degrees inclination, so all my satellites are at a nice flat even plane. So I'm adjusting it because I want it to be at about 100 millimeters, 100,000 kilometers. I want it to be fairly wide. There we go. Now we just burn towards. You can see both the Mun and Minmus right there. So we just point our rockets and burn towards it, right? That's how you get to moons in this game, celestial bodies. You just point your rocket at it and fire. No, that's not what we did, but it looked like we did, so that was fun. And of course we overshot, so we're just manually adjusting here. And we are plotting in our capture burn. Like I said before, we have a pilot on this, so we don't have to worry. But we're still using remote tech to do a lot of our autopilot maneuvering, so it's good to plot it in early. Yeah, you see, so now I have the same note that I was working on in the VAB, and you can make several notes. It doesn't have to just be the solitary one page, and each note has several pages that you can go through. But I like that you can work on it in the VAB as well as in flight. It's just handy, you know. But I'm starting to run out of charge already. I think it's because I don't have enough solar panels open, but it's because I have too many things on my craft, too many things that are requiring electricity, and my requirements are higher than my production. But there we go. We completed a contract to orbit Minmus. We completed a milestone of orbiting Minmus. We get there with way more fuel in our tank than we expected, so I have to readjust my staging all around, otherwise we would have just dropped that tank off. But here I am. I'm manually extending these pieces instead of using the action group, because I want them extended before I eject the pod. And then as you see here, I realized that none of these dishes are actually targeted towards anything, so I had to go and readjust them. I'm going to kind of speed through some of these things because it's a lot of the same thing over and over again. Look at that craft just waggling that back end at us. What are you doing? But yeah, so in short, to just kind of explain what I'm doing, Other people will explain it better. If you look up on YouTube how to create a satellite network, that'll explain it much better than I think I can. I'm not trying to be a tutorial channel, so I'll just take this with a little bit of grain of salt. But what you do is you get yourself into an orbit that you like, the orbit that you want your satellites to be in, and then you release your first satellite. You just let it go into the great beyond, and it should stay in that orbit that you're at. Then you either lower your orbit or you raise your orbit. So your apoapsis is either below your current orbit or higher than your current orbit. And what that does is that allows you to travel at a different speed than the satellite that you just placed. So what you do is you get yourself turned round and round and round until you get into the position where the second satellite is going to be placed. If you are doing 3 satellites, you want it in a triangular position. If you're doing 4 satellites, you want it in a square position. So as you see here, I'm lowering my periapsis, and then once we hit that, we're going to be on a different orbital path than the other thing, and then we can start positioning ourselves more correctly. But you rinse and repeat this. Once you get yourself into the right position, you bring your orbit back to the original diameter, I guess, that it was beforehand. So you're back into the same orbit that first satellite was in. So as you see here, I'm time warping and I'm scooting ahead of that other satellite. So I want to scoot until I'm about a quarter of the way around it, because I'm going to be doing 4 satellites, so I want to make a square. So I'm about there, so now I go and I plot in the circularization burn to bring myself back to the right position. And I orientate myself the right way, very slowly. And yeah, so then once you drop off your second satellite, it will now remain, as long as you put it in the right place, which is, again, complicated enough. I'll let someone else explain it. Just, if you're really interested, go look it up. There's several YouTubers, several big YouTubers, as well as several little YouTubers that I'm sure would love views and likes on their tutorials, as long as they do it correctly. But what we got here is we're just waiting to circularize our burn, and then we're going to drop off our next satellite. And you just rinse and repeat that until you have all 3 or all 4 satellites in the positions that you want them. And then it's just a matter of getting them on the right, what's it called? Orbital period? I think it's called the orbital period. But basically the time that it takes to circularize whatever body that they're going around to make one full revolution. You want those all to be the same number, as close to the same number as possible, because then they're not going to move out of place with each other. And so if you have them all stably locked and not speeding up relative to another one or slowing down relative to another one, you'll have a nice solid connection or communications network over that celestial body. So I'm just getting myself into position. And see, once again, I'm on that orbit, and I'm not exactly a quarter of the way away from them, which is not great. It's not a good place to be, but I'm doing 4 satellites, so I have some room for error. So go ahead and eject that one after deploying all the things manually. But as you can see here, I have no connection. And I have no battery. I have no charge on this thing. So therefore I have no control. And because I have no control, the satellite does not bounce communications off of it to each of the pieces. It's basically just a piece of trash floating around Midwest. That's all I'm making. It's just trash. And see, I don't even have a signal to set where the where the communication dishes will point. So I go ahead and I just, since they're no longer going to run into each other, onto the side ones, I just deploy all the solar panels. You know, I'm just trying to get any energy that I can. But as you see here, I'm floating away from things, and I'm getting myself slightly into position. I'm more triangular with those two, but you can see the connection between them in the lines. But then right there, I go ahead and line up on the other side, and I am almost perfect in that four-way pattern. As you can see there, the ship on the left-hand side is directly opposite to the ship on the right side, and while the ship on the bottom side isn't completely lined up, it's close enough. You know, we're not doing a contract, so we don't have to be perfect. We just need to have enough coverage over the planet. But as you see here, once again, I am struggling. I can extend the antenna, which is nice, but I can't really control anything. I have to use little short bursts of fuel to get myself turning towards the right way, because I have no electric charge. It means I have no SAS. You see what I mean? Just this whole episode, I've just been banging my head against the wall because I've just come up against error after error after error. And during the time, I couldn't figure out what the problem was. Like, I didn't know, and I was just reacting to things. I was just trying to throw solutions at it before I even knew really what was wrong. And those solutions weren't correct because they didn't address what was wrong, and that is, the satellites themselves do not have enough battery. In the next episode, I believe by the time the next episode starts, I have downloaded a mod called Ampere, A-M-P-Y-E-A-R, Ampere. And that, even though it is outdated, it still works relatively well. I don't think there's any real issues with it. But it's solely a calculator to determine whether or not your craft has enough batteries to survive an orbit or a day on whatever celestial body that you choose. So it'll tell you, like, oh, you're orbiting Kerbin at this height, you need X amount of batteries to keep it alive the entire time, even when it doesn't have access to energy like solar power and things like that. So very useful. So we're going to make use of that, and whenever we attempt to retry making a communications network, we are definitely going to be relying on Ampere to design them, to make sure that they can fit. Because all of this trash, all of this wasted time, this wasted effort wasn't good, you know. It really sucked to not have an episode that has something worthwhile in it. As far as like progression goes, as far as progressing our save, I feel like we didn't really do anything here. And as you can see, because I have no electrical charge, I'm really just struggling on the maneuvers. I'm no longer getting it accurate like I was before, and that's where you need accuracy when creating a communications network like this. And here we are, getting ready to make our last burn, get the last satellite into position. And there we go. We are we lowered our orbit so we can go faster, and before I knew it, I get this little message. Joust Kerbin has died of air toxicity. We lost the Kerbal, everybody. We didn't have a scrubber, an air scrubber on board. We had plenty of supplies and we had plenty of waste storage, but there are other factors involved, and the air itself ended up becoming bad, and Joust died. I come out here just one last time to see if there's any way that I can make connection with these satellites, if any of this was worth it, and I am so sorry to say, but Joust died in vain. And as always, we pay tribute to our fallen heroes, our brave Kerbinauts that throw themselves into danger every day for the betterment of Kerbinkind. And they too are heroes and deserving of praise and deserving of a salute. Yep, our second grave in our graveyard. No bodies to be claimed, of course, but anyways, that is where I'm going to leave this episode. Go ahead and stick around and check out episode 9, where we do some better work. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving me a like, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.